Welcome back, Spokane, to another episode of EvoReal Talks. I am your host, Matt Side, and I am with my lovely wife, Jessica.
Hi. How's everybody doing?
We are on part 6.
This is a long... We're doing this for a long time.
The Airbnb series, Investing in Nightly Rentals. Mm-hmm. So today you're going to continue talking about property setup.
I am. So we've talked about a lot of stuff.
We have talked about... Well, I was just going to...
Tell us, babe.
I was just going to re-emphasize how important this portion is.
Okay.
And the reason I say that for myself is I wouldn't think of most of these things. The fact that we have a 5-star rating on our nightly rental is huge in how you set it up. Like the first few guests that were there, the comments that they gave us, one of them that sticks out to me, like the review was, it felt like we were staying in a friend's home with lots of helpful signs. And I thought, actually, that is good feedback. Like it was appreciated. The effort that was put into it was appreciated. So,
aw, he's complimenting me on air.
On air.
That's so sweet.
I compliment you a lot.
He does compliment me off air, but it's nice to be on air.
I'm just saying that
for posterity.
Don't shortcut the system.
Yeah.
I would not spend this much time and energy. And while we were setting it up, there were several times that I was like, are you sure we've got to do this? Because I think we should just be done.
Yeah, that's true. I did have to kind of convince you at a few points along the way. Not that you were resistant to all of these things, but certainly there was.
And then somebody else just recently came back from, I think it was Palm Springs that they were in, and commented about their nightly rental. And she was like, it was super like ho-hum. And, just didn't give, it wasn't bad. It just didn't give that extra something.
The X factor that we've talked about?
The X factor. Yeah, why don't we... So with that, Jessica, what kind of knowledge are you going to drop on us today?
All right, so this is kind of part 2 of it's the physical setup of the property. Like, what are you going to do to the property inside to make it something that people want to, A, give you a good rating on, B, will be good pictures. Actually, that's probably A, good pictures.
Sure.
B, they're going to enjoy being at, and C, hopefully they'll want to come back to.
Sure.
Right? So your first year is better than your second year. Or excuse me, your second year. Everything that I say, we're just going to flip-flop. Everything that I say today.
Everything?
Yeah, it's going to be super fun.
Oh my God, this is going to be confusing.
Yeah. No. Okay, so last week we were starting to talk about the questions that you should be asking yourself to help you set up. So I'm going to continue along those lines. We're going to continue with the questions. So the next question that I have is, what will people be doing when they visit your Airbnb? And this is a big question because I have a lot of things to say about it. Okay, so our question was, what are people going to be doing when they come to Leavenworth? They're going to come to Leavenworth for the town itself.
Sure.
Which I know that some of you might be thinking, well, isn't that always the case? Absolutely not. We went to a place in Sandpoint where our goal was to never go into town, right? Is to be completely self-contained. But here in Leavenworth, people typically come there because they want to visit this wonderful little German village.
Yeah, and even those people that are farther out, like mountain cabins type thing, the draw of Leavenworth is enough to pull them into town.
Sure.
And so figure out your market.
Yeah. So we knew our guests were going to want to go there. So we had to figure out what transportation was available. Now, interestingly enough, our place is really close to town. So actually I did 3 things. Number 1, I figured out what are the best walking routes to get to downtown. And you might think, well, there might be just one. Well, there's one that is the fastest. And that is right on the highway, basically. Sure. Which for some people is going to be great because it's the fastest route and it's on a sidewalk and it's nice and wide. But other people...
It's pretty straight and level and
might
easy.
Want to be like one street in. And so we did that. One street in and then you cut over... and then the other one was a more scenic route. Now, it probably takes an extra 5 to 10 minutes to get to town because you're going down a big hill and then you're coming back up that hill, but you go down to the river. So we made a map with all 3 of those routes. Okay, so walking was important. The other thing that was important was parking, telling them about the parking situation in Leavenworth because, oh my gosh, it's not great, okay? And the busier the time of year, the more difficult it's going to be to park. And even in those times of year when it's not difficult to park, you're going to have to pay for parking. So making sure they understood that information.
And you found that out.
I did.
Firsthand, didn't you?
I thought that it was free. I parked and I got a ticket. Yay!
So it cost her more than
Yeah.
normal.
So again, we're going to talk about making sure you stay at the place. That was a helpful thing for me.
Yeah.
All right. The third thing that we came up with was there's a shuttle. We found out that there is a shuttle that's just right around the corner from our Airbnb. So we were able to get the information, put it on. We're going to talk about the welcome book with great detail. But we put that page in the welcome book. So it says, it gives you all the times and where the pickups are and where the drop-offs are. And it's great. So we've had people use all three of those options, which is wonderful. Okay, the other thing we wanted to make sure of is we know that people are going to be eating in town. Eating and drinking in Leavenworth is a big thing.
It's one of the major reasons
Right.
people come to Leavenworth.
Right. So we made sure that we talked about the restaurants, the beer houses, the activities, and we did it depending on the season. And again, when we get into the guest book, we're going to talk.
Yeah, you did
in
an
more
absolute bang-up job on the guest book.
And that's an important piece of the puzzle. Okay, so we also know that when people come here, they're coming for the holiday season. Okay, when I say here, I mean Leavenworth. Okay, so we made
They
sure
can be, not always, though.
What
They're
do you
not
say?
always coming for the holiday
No.
season.
But the possibility is that they're coming for the holiday season. So that means that we needed to make sure that we had enough cooking stuff for it, even if it's
sure.
a traditional holiday feast. Okay. So we have a roasting pan. We made sure we had a potato masher, a baster, a thermometer, the things that people would need to make a turkey.
And just so you know, I mean, I know that you're not in the management side of things,
True.
but Thanksgiving happened not long ago. And those were the questions. Hey, I'm thinking of making a turkey on Thanksgiving. Do you guys have any sort of a roasting pan? And
Right.
so, side note,
Yes.
fortunately, I was at the property doing some maintenance on it. And I looked it up, and you would have known this. We
I
would
would
have
have,
asked you. But I took some pictures of the pans specifically and like how deep they were. Like I have a picture of me holding it up. And so we were able to do that on the fly because I was
Yes.
there. But as a takeaway for even ourselves is getting some of those very detailed, like, so when somebody asks, do you have XYZ? You can be like, yeah. Oh, and here's some pictures so you know what you're getting into. And that guest decided, I think we're going to just do a roast or something like that instead of a turkey.
Okay, cool.
So anyway.
Yes, so all of those things are important, and yes, people are going to use them. The other thing that we realized for our Leavenworth property is that people were going to spend New Year's Eve there. When you think of New Year's Eve, what do you think of? Champagne flutes. So we made sure that it is stocked with not just wine glasses, but also champagne flutes so that people could have champagne.
Yeah, I mean, I think most, if you're going to have a reasonably well-stocked property, you're going to want all of the different types of
True,
drinkware.
but you got to think through that, and you got to decide how much room you have, and we're going to leave it up to you to decide. Listen, here's something that people that know Matt and I have understood is that
feel
Matt
like
and
I'm
I
gonna
have
get ratted
no
out.
Matt and I have no problem arguing in front of other people.
In front of whomever wants to watch in this situation.
So I apologize that sometimes you get
This
our
is not
argument.
even an argument. This
No,
is
but-
simply a discussion that is bringing us down to a greater level of truth.
There you go. So the other thing that because of the Christmas season that people were going to be up there, we wanted to make sure that we had Christmas decorations. I actually just got back from spending a whole day there and decorating the place, making sure that if people were going to spend Christmas there, it felt Christmassy.
Yeah.
That was important. Okay, so another question. So that was the question of what are people going to be doing? Yes.
Do you think, I mean, Leavenworth is kind of an anomaly. Like, it is Christmas town. Like, it is huge
Christmas
season.
town. Yeah.
But would you say that no matter where my nightly rental is, that I should have some kind of holiday decorations?
I don't
Or do you
know.
think you kind of just go... I'm just curious for
I
a
don't know
point of
because
discussion.
because if I think about, for instance, well, certainly a place that you're going to close up for the wintertime.
Well, of course,
I know,
yeah.
but that's something to consider, right? Is your lake place going to be open, or are you going to close it for the winter because it's difficult to access, or you don't want to deal with the snow or the liability or whatever that might be?
That's a great example. Like, I mean, maybe it's the lake place that I do keep open for the holidays. Like, that would seem reasonable that you would want to have that decorated, because if anybody's there over the holidays, it's kind of bah humbug.
Yes.
But what about your downtown condo in Spokane?
I don't know. I mean, I think it depends on if I lived in the same town, I might see, because you can spend a lot of money on Christmas
Yeah.
decorations, believe it or not. And so
you
I
know
might
it.
wait to see if I'm going to get people, in that first year, are people actually going to stay in my place at
Sure,
Christmas?
that's fair. We didn't necessarily pull the trigger on Christmas decorations until we were. I mean, we knew we were going to,
Yes,
but as
yes.
reservations started rolling in, we realized, oh, we have to do this.
Yeah, I think the level in which that you do it will depend
on that.
a lot of factors.
The beautiful thing with nightly rentals, and then I'll let you move on, is that most of the time, the platforms ask them, tell your host what you're planning to do when you're there. And so it's not, so even if you have a condo in Spokane that you're renting out on a nightly basis, you're going to see people saying, coming to spend time for Christmas downtown in the big city, or
Right.
whatever that might be. And so I think you can get an indicator as to the activities that people are planning on participating in just simply with your reservations.
Sure, absolutely. And of course, I have only had to think about one Airbnb. Let's be clear. And it is the one in Leavenworth. And I've certainly thought about others because we looked at a lot of other properties, but not to the depth that I've looked at this one. So would I then in the next one go, yeah, we should have Christmas decorations, but I know we're going on a trip soon and it's going to be around Christmas. But in my mind, I'm not like, I need Christmas decorations because we're going to be out so much that I'm not really, again, it's a crash pad, right? We're just staying in a crash pad.
I agree with that, but I will be personally a little bit disappointed if there's not any Christmas decorations.
This is probably fascinating radio
banter.
Yes. We're moving on. Okay. So another question I ask myself is, where will people charge their phones? There is nothing more frustrating than crawling around on the floor at night trying to
find a stupid outlet
behind the bed, right? It's just absolutely frustrating.
It's
so
2021 as we're recording this.
And this is a problem
2022.
that I wanted to solve. And so some of the things that I was able to use is I was able to buy a USB hub. So it wasn't just one hub. It had several different hubs and it had outlets on it as well. I put them on each bedside table so everybody had access to it. We also were able to, this is kind of cool, they now make lamps where they actually, built into the lamp itself is a wireless charger. So all you have to do is put your phone on that. And some of the lamps actually have their own
The
USB.
USBs, yeah.
So there's a lot of ways to solve this issue.
But it needs to be solved.
It does need to be solved. One of the things that we decided not to do, and again, this is definitely not gospel here, but we decided not to provide any cords. And the reason we decided not to do that is because it's so easy for people.
You'd be replacing cords
all the
day.
time. And I don't want to say I have them and then find out that they're gone. These things are plugged into the wall behind furniture. So people would have to intentionally, and it's very unusual looking, have to intentionally steal those, where I think it's very easy to unintentionally
just
take
grab a cord and go.
Yes. So that is something that we wanted to do. All right. The other question I had to ask myself is, where will they work? In this period of time, so many people are working from home and finding ways to then be able to go on vacation with their families and work part of the day or all day and then do something with their family in the evenings. We have to, as Airbnb or nightly rental people, think in terms of where will they work. Now, in our particular case, our place is way too small. There was no possible way that we could have a desk designated for people. But if you can have a desk, or even better yet, an office that someone could work in, and then you could have a futon that folds out into a bed or whatever to utilize the space, that would be great.
I mean, the platforms ask that because people are searching for it.
Yes. Now, in our particular situation, we had to go, okay, they're not going to have an office. There's not enough room in the bedrooms to put a desk. So for us, it was they're either going to sit on the couch or they're going to sit in the dining room, possibly the bar, right?
Sure.
So we made sure we talked about those USB hubs, but also making sure there's extension cords for them to plug in. Nice looking, again, not ugly orange extension cords, right? These are nice looking little hubs that have places for you to plug stuff in. And we have them on either side of the couch, and we have it in the dining room so people can take care of that. The other thing you need to make sure of is you have reliable and fast Wi-Fi. If someone's going to be working there, and even if people are not working, most people want to have some kind of Wi-Fi. Now, I understand that if you're way out in the wilderness or you've got something that is really remote, some people might actually be looking to get away from all of that stuff. But it's very unusual.
I think you can't not have You got to have to pay for satellite internet if you're way out in the boonies.
Yep.
People don't have to use it, but
Yeah.
they're going to want to have the option.
Yeah, and if you don't have it, you're going to have a lot fewer reservations. All right. The other question I had to ask myself is, how will people watch movies? Guys, there's lots of ways to do this. I've certainly seen places that still have a DVD player and a library full of DVDs, and that's great. The place we went to in Oregon last year
I think
had that.
honestly, at the property there is, I think, a DVD player. I mean, we don't have a library.
No
of them.
DVDs, and I have thought about providing some, but there's a lot of things that you can do. Let's just talk about the different options. Option number one is that you have a smart TV, and you don't sign anything in, but you invite your guests to sign into their own accounts. So, you've got a smart TV, it's got Disney Plus, it's got Netflix, but I would make sure that you're very clear that they would have to log into their account and remind them to log out.
Yeah,
so like a little sign or something
the log
that says
out, because I have visited with other nightly rental properties where they're like, people just they don't know how to log out.
Yes.
And some of those smart TVs are kind of complicated.
Yeah. So making sure you have really detailed instructions. I would actually even put it right next to the TV. Yeah. I'd have it in my welcome book, and I might even put it in my listing so people knew because here's what the worst thing is to set an expectation.
Yeah.
The expectation is, we have a smart TV. Let's go into Netflix. We can't get into Netflix. I don't know my password. All these things. And so then there's frustration about it. So that is a way to do it. I don't necessarily think it's the best way to do it, but it certainly is something that we have utilized and said, we'll just log into our own account and no big deal. The other thing that you can do is actually pay for a streaming service. Now there's two ways to do this. Maybe you're paying for your own personal, and then you do a profile for the guests. Now, to be clear, you can't really protect those as of this moment in time that I know of. So that means they could go into your account and watch a bunch of stuff, and that could get, I don't know, uncomfortable if they're watching things that you don't want to watch or whatever. But you can also then just buy a separate one, like not your own personal one, just one that is for the Airbnb, and you have a profile. We like to set up a profile for the guest and for a kid login, so that the kids, if they send the kids into a room, they can click on that and they know that all they're going to get is stuff that's for children. I think that's basically all the ways that I've thought of. Did you have any other thoughts on that?
I mean, cable, just normal cable.
Yes, cable is great. Cable can be great, especially if you've got
anybody that is wanting to watch
sports.
The Super Bowl. They're going to be like, "Hey, am I going to be able to get this football game or this baseball game?"
And this all comes down to your budget as well, right? You got to know what your budget is, and just be clear what you have and what you don't have. All right, next question had to ask ourselves is, will we allow pets? Now, here's the thing I find very,
you can
very
charge more
interesting.
if you do. If you will get more reservations.
Here's the thing. I have no information for you about that. Matt and I do not have any pets. We both grew up with pets, but we do not have any pets currently. And I'm sure that there are some really cool, wonderful things that you could do to make that pet owner feel really special. We did go to a place that was that did allow pets. This is a long time ago, and they had a wonderful pet bed that sat in front of the the fireplace. So I'm sure there's things that you can do. You're going to have to think of those on your own, because I don't really have a bunch of ideas for you, because that's not something that our community allows, and I'm not sure we would be okay with that just based on who we are. And we also have relatives that have severe allergies, so was not really a thing that we're going to do. All right. So I want to just give you a couple. So we're I'm stepping away from our questions, and I've just got a few tips here that I want to mention. When you're negotiating, the contract itself, see if you can negotiate any of the furniture, bedding, the household goods, the kitchen goods. It can save you a lot of money, but also just a lot of time and energy thinking about some of the stuff that you need to do. So just consider that, because a lot of times these places that you're getting, there are a second home.
If they're a vacation property for the person selling it, they might not want to have to deal with most of that anyway. They'll have some personal things they want to keep, but it's not as big an ask as it might sound.
So definitely think about that. And in case you are able to negotiate furniture and household goods, don't worry. Don't be so nitpicky about what you don't want, because you can always sell or donate the things that you don't want, and it makes it easier for the seller.
Make it easier on the seller. Absolutely. Yeah. Like, I want this and I don't want that, and will you take this item and that item over there? I mean, now all of a sudden the seller's like, oh, for God's sake, I'll just keep it all if that's what's going to be.
Right. Okay, so those were the questions that I asked myself. Now, I'm going to talk about my process then for deciding what I was going to do moving forward. Number one, I had to figure out what kind of, we've talked about this before, what kind of an Airbnb do I have and what kind of an owner am I? And we've talked about the fact that we are a combo owner. We need to rent it, but we also want to use it, and it is also far away, so that's a little bit of a different situation than having it be in your home or even in your hometown.
Yeah.
And the other thing that, we talked about needing to add a new type of Airbnb, because ours was actually a condo inside of a community that already had some built-in amenities.
Sure.
So that was helpful for us. All right, so number two, I researched what other people consider important. I asked all my friends that had stayed at Airbnbs, tell me something that you've loved about an Airbnb that you stayed at. Let me tell you some of the things that I heard.
That's good. You did your own market research.
Yes, I did. Number one, really clean. You need that place to be really clean. And so if there's anything that, that stuff that builds up around the baseboards, you need to get in there and do a deep clean if that stuff is still there. And then, of course, maintenance is going to be important, but making sure that first time through that you do a deep clean of the property. Here was an interesting one. Water in the refrigerator for when they get there. So some people said that they have opened the refrigerator and there's a water bottle or two sitting inside. Other people, there's a Brita filled with filtered water. Filtered water is really important to a lot of people because not every place has great tasting water. Also, which we've already addressed this, they had a hard time plugging in their phone at night. Like, that was such an irritation for so many people.
Yeah.
Paper towels was something that people said that was really helpful to have paper towels, because if you can just have a place that's completely, you don't have anything, like, what if they have a spill? What are they going to use? They're going to use a towel from the bathroom? That's not good. The other one, and this is not only my complaint, but other people's complaint, make sure you have the basics: salt, pepper, oil. Like, just those three things are really important. So again, doing your research, asking people what they've liked, what they haven't liked. All right. Number three, I used my own experience as an Airbnb and VRBO guest.
Sure.
And I listen, if you think that this is something that you might want to do, start keeping notes, even if you think you're not going to do it for a couple years.
I mean, remember back to that first place. It was in Leavenworth. It was outside of Leavenworth, up by Lake Wenatchee. And I don't think we ever found the pictures that we took, but we were so impressed with how they labeled the insides of all the drawers.
And I said, if I ever have an Airbnb, and this was probably 6 years ago or more. Yeah. I keep notes. I'll take pictures while I'm visiting places and go, I like that, or I like that. So start doing those kinds of things. And some of the things that I hated, not having spices, including salt and pepper and oil, vinegar, those kinds of things. So I not only have those things, I bought like several spices. Like, there's probably 12 or 15 different spices in my Airbnb because I'm a cook and I like other people to be able to cook. All right. The other thing that I love is notes and instructions outside of the welcome book.
Yes. And have we already talked about this?
No, we're going to talk about it. We'll save the welcome book and the differences between Matt and I and the welcome book for a little bit later. Okay. Number 4. I joined some Facebook groups where I could ask dumb questions. I asked questions like, what kind of coffee setup do you have? Because everyone has a different style of coffee setup.
Yeah.
I asked a lot of questions. Sometimes I got answers, sometimes I did not. And here's the cool thing. If you join one of those groups and you don't get the answers from people that you want, or you kind of don't want to ask a question, you just search the archives. You put in the word
there's a lot of
coffee.
questions already.
Boom, 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 boom. You could just get miles of conversations and things that people have talked about already. Absolutely invaluable. And I've seen people do things like, this thing just happened to me. How do I deal with getting my insurance, to kick in with Airbnb? And these people will help you through that. These Facebook groups.
Pretty incredible. Really
great. All right. Number 4, I made a spreadsheet. I broke it up by living room, dining room, entry, kitchen, bed 1, bed 2, bath 1, bath 2, storage, exterior, pantry, laundry, and then miscellaneous. And then I went through each of those rooms, okay? I went through each of those rooms and I asked myself, what do I need in the living room? What do I need in the dining room? Okay.
See, everybody, this is where I would have completely failed, and many of you would. So just pretend you're Jessica, channel your inner Jessica for a moment, and make your spreadsheet.
All right. So actually, I wanted to just talk a little bit, and we'll probably end here on the spreadsheet. Again, we'll get into the welcome book and all of that next week. But I wanted to just basically give you guys some ideas. I'm not going to tell you, I have 140 things on my list. All right. And I know
it's
little
incredible
items, but I want to just kind of talk about some of the things that we did. We already talked about the smart TV, and I do believe that if you have a TV in there that is not a smart TV, you might want to consider it, because it is a lot easier than the older TVs that you have to have a separate thing in order to make, or do a Fire Stick. Sorry, I just thought of that. If you don't have a smart TV that is updated, use a new Fire Stick or the Google Chromecast to be able to, basically it makes it into a smart TV. So I wanted to talk about furniture in general. Okay, and now we decided to do dining benches for our property.
Why did we decide to do that?
We decided to do that because we felt like, as far as, again, we had to deal with space.
Size.
We only had
Yeah.
like 900 square feet. And so if you put dining benches down, you can actually fit way more butts across that than you would be able to with just a chair. And a chair takes up more room per butt.
Sure.
You can fit 4 kids across,
one bench.
Yeah, exactly. Now, here's what I want to talk about, though. Sturdiness. When it comes to furniture, I know that there's a tendency to want to cheap out. Mm-hmm. And that, boy, I tell you.
Especially with chairs. Holy God, they're so expensive.
They can be really expensive. Things can be really expensive. You've got to try to find that happy medium. But one of the things you can do is you can look up and see what the rating is for the weight that it can bear. Watch for that. Because, gosh, you guys, wouldn't it be the worst thing to have somebody break one of your chairs? How embarrassing for them. Like, I really think about how does that affect my clients? Not only their stay, but their experience as a human being.
Sure.
And so making sure
Not to mention the safety. I mean, if they hurt themselves.
Yes, absolutely. So making sure that you have sturdy furniture. And for me, I wanted something that would last long enough that I wasn't having to constantly go up there and change out things. I didn't want a bunch of cheap stuff. Yeah. So beware. All right, let's just talk about the kitchen. Okay, the kitchen, let me give you some things. Nice knives, like good knives. There were some really bad knives that I could literally bend that came with the property, and I was like, not going to happen, and they're dangerous. Goodwill. And nobody wants to cut with those knives. Yeah. For us, we actually got a beer tasting kit for up there, so that because
which nobody has used yet, but it's there, right? There. Sometimes it's just the idea. People are like, I would love the idea of
that. Exactly. For us, the coffee setup was really important. We actually have a pour over system, so with a special kettle for people who like to do pour overs. We have a coffee maker for people who just want it done, and we have a French press. All 3 of those things. We decided not to do a Keurig. Part of it for us, that is bad for the environment, and so we decided we don't want to contribute to that by having.
It's really not that good a coffee. I mean,
and the K-cups and all that.
Just too close to Seattle to have to deal with that.
So we gave lots of people lots of different options for that. Now let me name the rest of the things in the kitchen. Not the rest of the things, but a few things in the kitchen that maybe you wouldn't think of. These are some details, right? You gotta be into the details if you want someone to be like, wow, this place was amazing. And then we will wrap it up. All right, we got sugar, an Instant Pot, which actually is also a rice maker, paper towels, trash bags, broom and dustpan, oil and vinegar, mixing bowls, slotted spoon, hand mixer. I wanted people to be able to bake with their kids. A lot of people do that on vacation. 9x13 pan, 8x8 pan or 9x9 pan, baking sheets, cutting boards, hand juicer, lip strainer. Like, now that's just so you know, that's about this much of a list. It's about this big. But I want you to know, like, think about all of those little things.
That's good.
Yeah.
Jess, mic drop.
Bam. Yeah, we have awesome. More. Next week, we're going to talk more about this.
So with that, have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks for joining us. If you have any questions that you'd like us to answer, feel free to reach out to us, ask@EvoReal.com. 50962 House, or you can find us on social media.
Cool.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.